Welcome to the Higher Authority Podcast.
I'm Paul Walsh.
And I'm Michael Weinberg.
This is a show dedicated to helping recruiting agency leaders like you scale your business, boost productivity, and win the war for talent.
Join us as we talk to the people behind some of the most successful recruiting agencies in the country and hear the real stories behind their growth.
What's worked, what's flopped, and what they're focused on next.
Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I'm Paul Walsh, co-founder of Complete AI Solutions, and this is the Higher Authority Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jean-Marie Callahan, founder and managing director of Latin America Executive Search Consultants. Jean-Marie has spent over 2 decades advising boards and C-suites on senior leadership hiring across Latin America and the U.S. Hispanic markets. She built LAESC into multi-country executive search firm with a footprint across Miami, Mexico City, and beyond. And she's known for blending global search rigor with deep regional insights. Jean-Marie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Our pleasure. Before we dive in, can you give our listeners a short overview of LAESC, who you serve, the focus areas, and how you position yourselves in the market?
Great. Thank you for this time. I really appreciate it. Well, Latin America Executive Search started in Latin America. In Brazil, I had worked for A.T. Kearney as a partner for many years and decided to break open and open my own firm. And we started in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we saw a need across the region for consistency of delivery and clients who have multiple offices throughout, multinational clients and family-owned businesses that have multiple offices throughout Latin America. So that is kind of the premise we started on. We saw a disconnect that many of the firms had people inside different countries, but they didn't understand having more of a regional footprint. Because that's so important in Latin America, because you have to have some consistency across each country and be able to have processes set up that will be able to bring more efficiency in recruiting. So that's kind of what we did. So we may start with one client in Brazil and then go ahead and help them build out Mexico. It could be Colombia, it could be Guatemala, it could be Peru, and work seamlessly throughout all the countries. And then we opened up in the U.S. because we saw a need for multilingual candidates as things were expanding, especially in Miami, where there was a lot of Latin America headquarters for global companies.
So what do you think was the original spark that made you want to build your own firm? And how has that early vision evolved as a region and the industry have changed?
I think what we saw was just there was not consistency in hiring. And you saw a lot of mishires. So you would have a great hire in Brazil or a great hire in Mexico, but something fell apart in the other countries.
Okay.
And a lot of people said, well, you can't really do this when you don't have people on the ground in Peru or Guatemala or some of the smaller countries. And I disagreed with that. I said, it's pretty easy to network in Latin America, a lot different than the U.S. People are very open. They take phone calls. You can learn the market fairly quickly, which is probably contrary to what people think.
Yeah. So you've navigated senior leadership hiring across multiple cultures and markets for more than 20 years. What do you think's the one leadership lesson that has stuck with you and still shapes how you operate today?
I think it's very simple at the end of the day. It's getting to know that candidate and having a network that you can tap into to get really good references. Because a lot of times I see in Latin America where companies in the US or Europe will start a search and they really don't know, they may use their local team, but they may be involved in the hiring and they don't really know the person or maybe their history. And that's something we're really good at. When we have a candidate hiring a general manager, we will know their history. We will know if there's any red flags. We'll find that out. And that's really key to stop any kind of issues going on that could happen in the future. So we try to mitigate any risk as much as we can. We're all human, but we mitigate those risks for our clients by knowledge and also having strong references in the market.
Very good. One thing that stood out about Latin American Executive Search Consultants is your footprint. So Miami, Mexico City, and the cross-border nature of your work. How do you balance a unified search methodology with the cultural nuances required for multi-country leadership placements?
It's really having a very strong process from day one. So we have a very clear process, very transparent process, and it really takes away a lot of the uncertainty. It's really processes at the end of the day and methodology that you stick with and don't cut corners. You know,
When you look
we don't do resume surfing. We don't do, we really interview, and it's interesting because we really get to know our candidates because we're smaller. We can do that and we're not public. So we're not based on a quarterly, revenue. So it's more for the love of doing it and our clients stay with us forever because of that. They
but
may try someone else, but they come back.
boutique, is that a good word that describes?
Yeah, I think a boutique is easier to, work with sometimes because you don't have as many, when you're with a big firm, which I've been with, you have mandates, you have all kinds of thresholds you have to meet on revenue and to stay a partner. And that brings in some kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word, where you're more focused on the revenue than you are on the actual search.
Makes sense. When you look at the last 12 months, what's been the biggest operational win for your firm? And what did you put in place that made that possible, do you think?
I think it's looking at which companies are expanding, being aware of what's going on economically in each country, political environments. There's a lot to, I lived in New York and it was like, that old adage of if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. It's if you can make it in Latin America, you can make it anywhere because we have so many challenges in Latin America: currency risk, political risk. Now we have tariffs that we never had before that. So you really have to be smart on and really read and make sure you're on top of the economic situation and political situation of each country to see which companies, and also globally, because if you have global clients, they may be cutting. There's a lot of jobs being cut right now, as you know. Sometimes Latin America is first, sometimes it's last in those downsizes. So you have to be aware of that. So I think that's been our success this year, really watching that and understanding, okay, who is really, and also maybe there's things on hold, but keeping in front of your client to see what their needs are. Sometimes they'll call you just because they need some advice. What are we doing with salary wise? Are we up to date on this? They're focusing on other things while the market is a bit, the market is slow right now. I think it's globally with uncertainty. So clients are looking more of updating. They have more time to think about benefits, more time to think about salary surveys, things like that.
Latin America Executive Search Consultants positions itself on cultural fit, localized intelligence, and long-term relationships. What's something your clients consistently tell you that sets you apart from the larger global firms?
I think it's knowing the markets. They're very surprised how much depth we have of knowledge, because even the local teams sometimes don't have, we'll be able to talk about if we're hiring a general manager, will this person go on and take on LATAM? Well, which markets will they be taking on? So we look for the future. And I think I'm not hiring for today, I'm hiring for tomorrow. And I think that's really important to express to clients because, they're paying a lot of money for our services, for hiring a client. You have to be very aware of does this person have international experience? Can they really work with a European team? Can they really work with a US company?
Yeah, that's a good point. Hiring for today, not for tomorrow.
Yeah, you have to do that. And how much stretch do they have, the candidate? Can they take on a region later? Because if they're in a big market like Brazil or Mexico, their next step in their career would be a regional position. And we've done that so much. We've even hired regional heads that end up taking the CEO position in the US. Because the one thing that I think people misread about LATAM, you really, really have to know economics and currency, and you really understand financials better sometimes than their US counterparts because there's so much uncertainty every day with currency. I lived in Brazil when the currency was 1-to-1 with the dollar. Today it's almost 6. So you have to be so aware of things that most recruiters in US, Europe, they're more probably attuned because they look globally in Europe. But US, sometimes they don't. They don't even understand, that, okay, all of a sudden you hire somebody. For instance, here's a good example. I was hiring a CEO in Argentina, and we went to buy the car. As in, unlike the US, they have Latin America, I know people say to me, "What? They get a car?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have car benefits. We have benefits that you don't have in the US,
Yeah.
okay?"
Right.
I miss those a lot sometimes, but so we went to go buy the car and we had a budget of, I think, $80,000. By the time we went to buy the car, it had gone up to 95,000. So I had to get an approval for that because of inflation. We talk about inflation at 3%. We're used to inflation at, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen it at 90.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So it's a very different, there's a lot of nuances, and I think that's the understanding that, and also being curious. I've always been a curious person, and I
That's
look for curiosity in people I hire, because that's the most important skill sometimes. Is if you don't have a curious mind, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a good example. So when you look at your team's workflow, where do you see the biggest bottleneck today? Is it sourcing top tier candidates, engaging qualified leaders, or managing the overall search and placement process, do you think?
I think it's different today. All those are pretty common issues that pop up.
Okay.
Today, I think it's a really strange time. I have candidates that are afraid to leave their job. Or for the first time, I've had, 58-year-old, 57-year-old candidates say, you know what? I'm going to take the package and leave. And that's never happened before. Never. I mean,
Really? Yeah.
in COVID, it was different. People couldn't really do much. But there was
So
a lot of recruiting going on in COVID. But today, it's people are afraid to make that move. They're like, well, if I make it, will I be the first one in, first one out?
it's
If there's a
fear
downside, I think it's
driven.
a lot of uncertainty.
Uh-huh.
And then we have, NAFTA, we can bring engineers to the US. That's still available. But the H-1B visa thing has really taken a toll on clients saying, and they need H-1B folks in the US. And so that's also different. So I think Canada, in general, candidates are a little bit more hesitant about moving. So it seems to be, instead of employer, it's harder to get them to change.
Yeah. Makes sense. How much of your team's time is consumed by administrative tasks
Not
like
that much. We're pretty lean. That's one thing
coordination,
I did in the beginning. I make everything pretty simple.
scheduling follow-ups versus the relationship building and the advisory work? Do either help move those searches
Scheduling's
forward
pretty
more?
automatic
Okay,
today. Pretty get, that kind of administrative stuff is just pretty easy today with all the technology we have.
sure.
I think it's keeping in touch with people, the advisory, that takes more time sometimes.
An executive search candidate and client communication. So often it happens outside typical hours. How do you currently handle inbound inquiries or urgent outreach that comes in after hours or on weekends?
I'm so used, I guess I don't know how other companies do it, because I know a lot of them shut down at 5 in the US. I've learned that. I've always had odd hours living in Latam and
Yeah,
working with Europe, or,
that makes
you know,
sense. Yeah.
and earlier in my life, I lived in China, and in Hong Kong. For me, it's probably not something that is an issue, but I
Yeah.
can understand other firms where they have to have quality of life for their candidate, for their employees. But, a lot of times I'm the one that'll take the late night calls, and I won't enforce that on my team. And I do like, to be honest with you, I love weekend and after hour calls, because during the day, well, now with remote work, it's totally different, right?
Sure.
If you go back to the old days, people just, you had to schedule around their time. And a lot of times they didn't want to take calls after 5 to candidates. So, we just do it. I mean, there's not really science to it. You just, when they're available, you have to take the calls, and
Yeah.
clients as well. But
Yeah.
it's not a big issue with us because we're just used to it.
That makes a lot of sense. And you're right. It's just such a changing world for all of us.
Probably other companies I know close at 5, and they have, more, not as much flexibility, but in that time you have to have flexibility.
And that's part, I guess, the kind of your ability to be flexible.
Yeah, and I work in the US now with Discovery. I'm a client partner there. They're based in New Jersey, a great group. And, they also are very flexible in time and I guess the change is too more of what, when we used to go and meet clients face to face and not have remote virtual hiring, recruiting.
I'm going to change gears a little bit here on this one. The AI conversation in recruiting is loud and often overhyped. From your vantage point, working on senior level roles, how is AI actually impacting your day to day operations? And where do you see real opportunity versus noise?
That's a great question, Paul. You're right. There's a lot of noise. And I think that people forget that AI is driven by humans. It's not driven by the machine yet. So I think the good part of it is it speeds things up. I think for clients that have to do a lot of multiple hiring, lower level, maybe middle management, maybe factories, it can speed up those processes of very fast hiring. For senior leadership, I'm not so sure AI is a tool that will work because there's so many nuances that, when you're hiring a senior leader, you don't want CVs spit out because the keywords don't match. The industry you have to be creative. Maybe you're looking for somebody for a packaging company, for instance, but then you realize, well, packaging is plastics. It has there's some elements to it as long as if they do manufacturing, maybe you need and AI is never going to do that. It's never going to do that creative part of search where you come up with ideas for clients. And that's kind of what my clients love about me and our firm. We have very out of the box because it's very simple to hire somebody from the same industry. That's not rocket science. But bringing somebody in that understands something that may be the client's future, or, oh, yeah, we did that for several clients and many, many clients all the time. And I think that's the differential. But I think is going to be good for scheduling, for all that administrative work. But I'm a little hesitant to say that it's fine tuned enough to really, truly be able to. I mean, they can analyze a CV, but they can't analyze a human and all the
Agreed.
motivations that come with, is this a good candidate? What's their motivation? What's their history? How did they lead? Are they autocratic in their nature, which won't work today? How have they, all those things, AI is not going to be capable.
Yeah, they're really insightful comments about AI. Jean-Marie, when you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what is the one major shift you expect to see in how leadership is hired, developed, or evaluated across Latin America? And how is LAESC positioning for that?
I think it's changing. I think there'll always be education's a big part in LATAM, having a strong education, an MBA from a top school, all that. But I think clients are looking beyond that now. They're looking at skill based. That's a big new paradigm that, it's interesting because they really want people who have done this before. They're not, you have to have that skill base today. And I think that's where it's going to move to. And also, I think AI will take over a lot of the staffing roles. I
That's a
think
word.
staffing will diminish and, and internal recruiting may end up taking over that end of it. But I don't think executive search it'll downsize for sure. It'll definitely have an impact because you can get faster, you can put your parameters in and then you could get, 20 years experience, all that. But then what I'm afraid of with executive search, it will miss candidates
Okay.
because it's what you put in, isn't it? That you get out.
Yeah.
So
Right.
just the way of function that it works technology wise. So I think that's going to be what's going to shape things.
What do you think's what's one unconventional strategy that you've used that noticeably improved speed to placement or quality of shortlists?
That's a great question. We've used technology, but it's not for interviewing. It's not for, it's getting phone numbers today, getting emails. We use all that,
Sure,
which
sure.
people have used for a long time, but we tend to keep upgrading those systems to do that. I'm not social media is really becoming very popular for recruiting. Top level, you really can't go there. They don't want to see you sending them a note on Facebook. Trust me.
It doesn't align. Yeah, it doesn't align. Yeah.
But it does work for middle management and below. It really truly does. I mean, they do answer that. The Gen Zs answer. Now, maybe in the future, that's going to change because the Gen Zs are getting a little older now, right?
Yep. Yep.
It
Yep.
could change. I mean, I'm just being open-minded about it. I try to be open-minded. I have colleagues that, don't even think that, social media is important I think it's very important. Maybe the thing that is employer branding has to get better, much better. And I think companies that are truly maybe going for benefits that in the past were very rare. Like paternal leave is now kind of, pretty much baked into a lot of the benefits now, right?
It is.
But not
Yeah.
all companies. But what about infertility treatments? Paid family leave. For instance, my sister now with my mom in hospice, Apple's amazing. She has 12 weeks. So I think that's going to be more the standard bearer of what can we do to make, life easier for our employees, and that retains them. That's where Apple's very clever. And
Yeah, that's smart.
retainment is big. I think retainment has been overlooked for a long. And
'Cause
now you see with everybody kind of on hold in the market, retainment's even more important. I just lost a candidate because he decided to stay in the company and they offered him $40,000 more. And it's just a director role than what I
because
offered.
yeah, is because it's so expensive when they lose somebody? Is that one
And
of the
he knew everything that was going on in the company for them to go out and hire. Exactly, Paul. You're exactly right. So maybe those are the things that I think will be the shift.
Okay.
And if you're balancing, do I stay at this and also what I find fascinating being my age and is, when I was 30, 20 in my 20s, 30s, I didn't even 401k.
Yeah. I
And
know.
we thought we could live forever, right? What are you talking about retirement?
Absolutely.
Now you have 20, 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds say, what's the 401k benefit? I've seen up
Yeah.
to 9% on 401ks.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah, that is.
It's
So
wild.
here's
So I
here's
think
some
it's a benefit issue. It's not
okay.
one thing. It's one category, but it's many facets.
If you could wave a magic wand and automate one non-revenue generating activity in your firm tomorrow, what do you think that would be and why?
Wow. You've got great questions, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, we've got calendars. We've got, now we have so many things automated. Let me think
We
that what
Yeah, we
isn't
do.
automated?
So it'd be more, I guess that question would be sort of what do you like be like where are those issues? Where are those things that could maybe be smoothed? What could be smoothed down? What could go easier, seamless?
I think it's always the reaching out, but you don't want to be, it's kind of hard because reaching out to candidates, I get on the phone and I call. Okay. I don't just send emails. You can't do that.
Balancing act.
Balancing act. Exactly. I don't know what could be more automated. We have maybe with AI going through CVs and just looking for matching the job description to give you that first screen.
Okay.
But then again, I'm worried that you will get lazy and not look outside the box
Miss. Yeah.
and miss. So, I mean, we've got so much automation now
Yeah.
with the databases and all reports are automated, maybe something but I hate to say leave voicemails that are automated, but I mean, sometimes you are making 10, 15 calls a day and maybe 3 people pick up, but I don't know. I don't know. That's a good one.
Okay. And here
When
this
you
one
find out, let me know.
I know. Well, we might be able to, talk about that.
We've got to think about that one
Yeah,
because
absolutely. This one's going
it's
to
a
tap.
tricky slope, as you
It
said,
is. It's
I
a
mean, I
slippery.
would love it to be automated, but then you lose that personal touch.
Yeah, that it's a real balance that you're saying there. So this one's going to tap into a little bit of your expertise. What's one industry trend that you think most agency leaders are underestimating right now?
Think it's people being afraid to move. I think they're very afraid to make that jump
And you had touched on that.
earlier. Yeah, I think that it's more relevant than anyone knows because people will say, "Oh, but there's so many people being downsized." And I also think too is that a lot of people are picking up folks that are just out of work because it's easier.
Yeah, well, it makes
That kind of scares me a little bit. Not to say that people are not downsized who are very, very good and relevant and have amazing experience, because they're just sometimes the last one in, and that's the decisions they have to make. But that could be interesting to see where that leads in the future.
Absolutely. Well, Jean-Marie, thank you. This was excellent. I really appreciate your openness and perspective you bring, especially around the realities of cross-border search and the future of leadership in the region. For listeners who want to learn more about you and the work your team is doing at Latin American Executive Search Consultants, where's the best place for them to find you?
They can find me on our webpage, at www.laexecutivesearch.com.
That's perfect. And for everyone watching or listening, thank you for joining us. If you're enjoying these conversations, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps us bring more of this to you. We'll see you the next time on the Higher Authority Podcast.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Jean-Marie.